Okay, class, we are starting the third element of weather and climate, and this is atmospheric humidity. We want to define atmospheric humidity and explain some factors that influence atmospheric humidity. Atmospheric humidity refers to the amount of water vapor in atmosphere. The atmosphere we have contains water vapor. The next question you should ask yourself is, how does water vapor join the atmosphere? Water vapor joins the atmosphere under the following processes: evaporation, which takes place on water bodies and wet grounds; transpiration, which takes place on vegetation or plants; and then the third process is volcanic activity or process through hot springs and geysers. Then what are the factors influencing atmospheric humidity? For atmospheric humidity to be high or low, to be much or less, there are a number of factors that influence that. We have temperature. The higher the temperature, the higher the atmospheric humidity, because it is temperature which accelerates the rate of evaporation and transpiration. Then we have water bodies. If an area has many and big water bodies, it is likely to have much atmospheric humidity because of much evaporation that takes place on these water bodies. Vegetation cover. Areas with thick vegetation cover, like forests, are likely to have much atmospheric humidity because vegetation transpires under the process of transpiration. Then we have relief. I believe flat areas, using some science, are always hot, and therefore temperatures are high and can accelerate transpiration and evaporation, and therefore high humidity. Mountainous areas are always cold and therefore may have limited atmospheric humidity. We have latitudinal location. This is the distance from the equator. Areas near the equator have high or much atmospheric humidity because they are hot. Temperatures are high, which accelerates transpiration and evaporation. And remember, equatorial regions have equatorial vegetation or forests, which promote transpiration. Then we have man's activities. Man's activities like afforestation, reforestation, agroforestry can increase transpiration, and this will also increase atmospheric humidity. Man's activities like industrialization can also lead to global warming and increase evaporation in that case, and therefore high humidity. However, activities like charcoal burning, deforestation, swamp clearing, bush burning, overgrazing, those are enemies of vegetation and therefore may limit transpiration, which also limits atmospheric humidity. Altitudinal location. The higher you go, the lesser the atmospheric humidity. Why? Because the higher you go, the cooler it becomes. And if temperatures are cold at a higher altitude, it means processes that lead to much humidity will not mature. And I hope much of the atmospheric humidity is found in the lower atmosphere, in the layer of troposphere, because that's where vegetation is and that's where the water bodies are. Seasonality. I believe dry seasons are hotter than wet seasons, and therefore much humidity in dry season than in wet season. However, one can also say in wet season, water bodies are full and available, vegetation is thick, it can promote transpiration, and water bodies also promote evaporation. It depends on one's argument. The nature of soils or ground. Wet grounds promote more evaporation than dry grounds. Time. At noon, temperatures are always high, and therefore much evaporation and transpiration at noon compared to morning hours and evening hours. Nature and speed of winds, especially let us talk about the nature. Cold, dry winds and warm, moist winds. I believe areas which are served by cold, dry winds are associated to deserts, and areas which are served by warm, moist winds receive rainfall. So in case the deserts are formed in areas served by cold, dry winds, temperatures will be high and maybe promote evaporation and transpiration. And areas also on windward side, or areas which are served by warm, moist winds, may form some water bodies, can lead to growth of vegetation which promote transpiration, and the water bodies will promote evaporation. It depends on one's argument. Then we have composition of water. What does water contain? Is it salty water? Is it fresh water? And I believe evaporation is too much on fresh water bodies compared to salty water bodies. The area or the size of evaporation also matters. In case this transpiration is or evaporation, let us consider evaporation. Evaporation from seas and oceans is much higher than evaporation on ponds, and therefore we expect to get much atmospheric humidity from seas and oceans compared to the other one we get from ponds and small lakes. Then we have atmospheric pressure. This one is described by zones of atmospheric pressure. Areas with low pressure are always warm, and areas with high pressure are always cold. So what does it mean? Areas with low pressure belts have areas with low pressure belts always have high atmospheric humidity because they are warm, and areas with high pressure belts always have low humidity because they are cold, and therefore transpiration and evaporation are limited. Thank you.